C.S. Lewis said, grief is like having a sort of invisible blanket between the world and me. I find it hard to take in what anyone says, or perhaps hard to want to take it in. It is so uninteresting. Yet I want others to be about me. I dread the moments when the home is empty. If only they would talk to one another and not to me. Well, my friend, for the next few moments, you're not alone, and you're not in an empty house. We are here with you. Welcome to A Grief Observed. Hi, I'm your host, Chaplain Kevin Weaver, and I have with me today Miss Faye Hollywell.
That's right.
Faye has been my friend for many years now.
Yeah.
We met each other through a very difficult circumstance. Her husband died, and I was the chaplain that came in and ministered to her husband and her. And so I wanted to bring her on the show today to talk with you and to you about her grief. See, as we begin, Faye, a new year, we certainly have all the expectations and hopes for, a wonderful, exciting, vibrant new year. But we also carry into that new year some of the baggage, the hurts,
Yes.
the griefs of last
That's
year
true.
and the years before.
Yeah.
Most specifically, I wanted you here today because you had a very significant loss in your life over 40 years ago.
That's right.
And that's what we want to talk about.
Yes.
Her name was Mandy. And
Yes.
this is Mandy when she was
2.
2.
And this is Mandy when she was 8.
Okay. And Mandy died when she was 8 years old.
Yes, very suddenly.
So what happened?
We went, we thought we would have a nice day out and go to Death Valley, and we would all swim because it was so warm there. And Mandy was jumping in and out of the pool. Look at me, Mummy, look at me, Mummy. And then she dove into the pool, and she came to me and she said, I've got a funny pain in my head. So I said, well, just sit down. And she said, oh, there's nothing wrong with my legs. It's a pain in my head. And with that, she collapsed on the floor, and that was the end of Mandy's life.
So she
had
an aneurysm.
She had an aneurysm.
And she died at that moment?
She never regained
Never regained
consciousness.
So tell me, how in the world, I'm asking your age now, how old were you then?
I was, I'm getting on for 90 now. And I was, that was 40 years ago.
So you were a young mother, and this was your only child?
Yes.
How did you manage that?
I don't know. It was so hard. And my husband, this is my husband, this good-looking guy here. He didn't grieve like I did. He's very introverted. And of course I wanted to talk about it all the time because I thought if I talk about her, she's there. She hasn't gone away.
Well, you bring up an excellent point. And of course, people process grief and loss in many different ways and for many different reasons.
Yeah.
But that's really the purpose for this show, is because I feel that a really important way to process grief is to talk about it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's, you have a story to tell, and I feel like you need to tell that story over and over and over again until you don't need to tell the story anymore.
Oh, I was a pain though. I would try and keep her alive. I almost thought she was there.
Well, because what we do, we accept and we know where they are physically, but there also is a part of us that wants to kind of figure out and put them someplace spiritually. And you said it, and we will deal with that a little bit later on in the show today. But you found a place for her spiritually, and that's where she was. And so when I asked you, how did you get through it? Your reply was, I don't know. Well, that's how you got through it, because you did find a spiritual place.
Yes, I did. But at the beginning of time, I just never stopped talking about it. And these people would, my brothers and sisters would get this pained look. Shit, there she goes again.
There she goes again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sadly, that's not an isolated story. That happens with many people. And that's what I found is really the secret to grief counseling, is finding a willingness to hear a person's story as often as they want to tell it, as though we're hearing it for the first time. That's what this is all about.
Well,
40 years later, tell me, how does the loss of Mandy affect you 40 years later? Are you over it?
No, I still cry.
Still cry.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah, we were talking in your home the other day, preparing for the program,
Yeah.
and you did begin to cry. And,
Yeah.
and you know what? It's because the grief, the loss, is not something that we get over. We learn to live with.
Well, you know what I did? I'm not entirely stupid, so I did think to myself, I've got to do something about this.
Sure.
So I thought, well, what do other people do? And I'm laying out on the settee and I'm thinking, I've got to do something. And I thought, well, they pray.
Okay.
Other people pray.
They do.
And I thought, well, who do they pray to? And I thought, I don't know, who do they pray to? There's Buddha, Confucius, and I went through all the names God, Jesus, all the names I could think of. And I said, if you're listening, if you're real and you're there.
Whoever you are.
Yeah, whoever you are.
Yeah.
And I need help.
Wow.
I remember saying that, I need help. And that was what I prayed. And I went to bed. And the next morning I woke up and I felt different. I still had the grief.
Mm-hmm.
I still could cry all day, but I didn't feel as bad. And I went, oh, isn't that great? You pray to all these people and you get,
Something happened.
Yeah, they help you.
Well, since we're going down that path, what happened?
Well, 2 years happened, and we moved out. We were working in Las Vegas. We moved out to Boulder City, and I remember we had adopted a little girl by then, and my husband came in from the garage, and he said, I have to tell you, I am not happy. And I went, oh, happy sappy, who's happy, who can, you just go through life, you don't have to be happy.
Well, let me interject.
Yeah.
What you didn't tell the viewers today is that you were performers in Las Vegas.
Yes.
You and your husband, Wilf.
Yeah.
And you had a show and you entertained.
We were at
weren't you the Jolly Jovers or something like
yes,
that?
the
And so
Jolly
you had kind of a
Jovers.
comedy acrobatic routine.
Yeah, we were there for 20 years.
And so you made a living based on helping people find,
Making people laugh.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, he came in and he said, I've got a big empty space here. And he said, and I'm just not happy. So I said, oh, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. I said, I've seen a pastor. Well, I called him a vicar.
A vicar, yeah,
Because
sure.
I was over from England.
Right.
So, yeah. So I said, I've seen this man walk around backstage, and he's got a badge on, and it says a pastor or something. I forget what
Probably
it said.
chaplain.
Chaplain.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Yeah.
See, I am old. And I said, I tell you what we'll do. We will get Wendy, our little daughter at that time, and we'll have her christened. I said, that's good. He'll come over, and I'll ask him to christen her. So I'll call him up. So I called up, and his name was Jim. And I said, is that you? And I told him who I was, and he said yes, he knew where I was working and everything. And he said, I have to come and talk to you. And I thought, oh, I don't want to talk to him. I don't know how to talk to a vicar. Well, what do I, oh no. I thought, oh no, this isn't going to work. So he said, I'll be over at your house tomorrow. And so I told my husband, Wilf, and I said, he's coming over here. So Will said, well, I'm going out.
He was going to run from him.
Yes. He said, I'm just going out. So I said, well, no, don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I won't know what to say. So he said, all right, he would stay. And the next day, Jim did come out.
Right.
And he was very nice. And I had a kitchen with a great big counter. And Jim sat that side of the counter, and Wilf and I sat the other side. And Jim starts telling us about the Bible. And I said, oh, don't tell me that. I said, I've been in show business all my life, and you can do magic, and everybody thinks it's real.
Right.
And there's all these magic tricks. Anyway, then I started feeling like I wanted to get up and dance on the counter. There was a big counter.
My goodness.
I could have done it in those days. But so I held on to the counter. I thought, what's happening to me? Something weird is
So
going
you really
on
felt something
here.
pulling on you.
Yes. So I hung on to the counter. But I still argued with him. And he was so nice. He said, yeah, people think that's true. And I'm going, gosh, I thought he would argue back with me.
But he said something that
said,
that resonated within Will first,
yes,
right?
Because he said, everybody has an empty space. It was Will's very words.
What he said,
word for
not-
word for word.
Exactly.
And that shocked me. I thought, wow, has he got cameras in my house? And
Oh, goodness. And so what he was offering was something that Will found could fill that empty space.
Oh, Will said immediately.
And so he jumped on it.
Absolutely.
So that tangible thing that was pulling you, Wilf responded to it, and
Yeah.
he found some resolution.
He said, you're absolutely right.
So the light-
that's it. That's
light
what
turned
it
on.
is.
Yep.
Yes. So then he said, would you like to pray with me? And I was all ready to say, no, I've never prayed with anyone in my life. I don't know how to pray with you. So Will said, yes, I would. And that shook me. I said, well, if he's going to, I'm going to.
So Will's good
And
for
that
Wilf
was
is good
my
for me.
attitude. That was absolutely my attitude.
Interesting note, you told me this. You really were not any kind of a believer.
No.
A doubter, agnostic, maybe even atheist, but something pulled you.
Yeah.
And here's the point that we're making. As we travel down these journeys of grief, we have to find something within us, something that pulls us. And you felt this almost tangible thing pulling you. It was religion, or it was relationship. Well, in your case with Christ, with others, to a higher power, some type of a source that pulled you. When you responded to that, did you find the happiness or the emptiness that filled the void?
Well, my life changed from that day. The pastor left. Eventually, we said the sinner's prayer, and he left. And I thought, gosh, he's going already. He just led us to the Lord, and off we went. Off he went. So it was one thing after another that happened. I couldn't look at Wilf. I was shy.
Right.
And so then we had to go down and we had to work. And so we were working at the Stardust. Went to the stage door, banged on the door, and one of the stage hands opened it and said, congratulations. So I said, on what? And he said, I hear you accepted Jesus as Lord today. And I was so embarrassed. I thought, oh, everyone knows. What am I going to do? So I walked further in, and everybody seemed to say, congratulations. So I thought, oh, if they know, they know. I might as well go. I might as well admit it. And from that moment, my life changed.
Life change. Wow.
Yes.
Again, it is about finding that certain something that will guide us, lead us,
I know it sounds crazy.
Well,
I know that, a normal person would think it was really mad, but it happened. That's
well,
what
and it
happened.
wasn't. Yeah, it didn't fit into the guidelines or the standards of a denomination or a particular theology or a certain
That's
dogma.
right.
It was a personal experience and something that happened to you.
That's right.
And that's what we want to share with you folks that are listening and looking in today. I mean, there is something out there that can guide you in your grief to help you through the difficulties of profound losses that you're still dealing with, crying
Yeah.
about over 40
Years
40
later.
years later. That's an amazing story. You know what I'd like to do now, Faye? Thank you for sharing your journey, and I know that we could have spent hours talking about
Yeah.
what happened, but we're only on a 30-minute show. and so with that, we've got some letters here that came into my column, and we're going to use your expertise to deal with some of the questions
Poor people.
and look to you for the answers. This particular writer says, Dear Grief Observed, the holidays are fully upon us. My joy easily yields to sorrow because I'm facing these special days without a loved one, my mother in this case. I'm not sure how to act. I'm not sure how to face joyous occasions with this deep and persistent pain of loss in my stomach. You had the answer. You faced daily trying to bring people to a place of happiness and joy with an emptiness, with a hole. What can we speak to this person? I mean, when that pain is deep and it's persistent, what did you do? What can you do to find relief?
Well, the only thing I found was once I stepped on stage, I had to put all my thoughts into what I was doing on
So
stage.
initially you immersed yourself in your work.
Yes.
And you became fully involved with that.
Absolutely.
You know, that is a good immediate release, is to find something very productive to involve your life with. In your case, it was your work. Well, I wrote back to this person and I said, there really is no simple answer except maybe honesty. Greet each day with an honest response. If you don't feel like attending a particular event, then just don't go. Conversely, if you find joy and happiness in a given gathering, then embrace it fully. In other words, if you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like laughing, laugh. Fully embrace each moment, sorrow or joy. That will advance you in your grief recovery. You think about that. When you feel like crying, do you still cry?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you feel like laughing, laugh, and laugh without restraint, unhindered.
I do that too.
Don't feel guilty because you're laughing.
Yes, the crying, of course, comes not nearly as often.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
Yes.
and sometimes, and I can go now for weeks without even thinking about Mandy, but I just have to see
See a
one little
picture.
thing, and then and
Yeah.
it comes back.
Well, and that's what we can guarantee, that the pain or the sting, that persistent gnawing feeling of the loss, it will lessen, and the pulses of it, the waves of it will become further and further apart.
Absolutely.
As you advance.
Yes,
as you advance
that's
in your
so
journey.
true. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another writer says, Dear Grief Observed, it is time for one another of those puffed up New Year's resolutions that lose air quick. There are things in my life I'd like to change, but I'm afraid the outcome will be the same. How can I keep my promises to myself? When you initially, or at what point did you feel like, if any, something had to change?
Oh, I felt that I was putting a burden on my family that I shouldn't, and that it was my loss, wasn't their loss.
Right.
Why was I making them? You know, they get this look on their face. There she goes.
There she goes again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what typically happens, and that's not an unfamiliar story. It's those around us who soon, for lack of a better expression,
Yeah.
lose interest.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves with nobody to share the burden with.
Yeah.
And really, the burden of grief is meant to be shared. There is even a scripture that says that we are to bear one another's burdens.
Yeah.
Another place in the Old Testament scriptures says that we are, in fact, our brother's keeper.
Yeah.
And so we are meant to share this burden with one another. And I guess that's the point where you just decided, well, people say to pray, who do I pray to?
Yeah.
And you just shot it out there like a shotgun,
Yeah.
and the answer came back to you. Well, I respond back to this person. First off, I tell them, let yourself off the hook. Don't make any promises. Just do your best. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, sounds good.
And, well, I mean, what else can we do? What else can we do?
Yeah.
I can only do my best.
Yes, because if you make a promise, then you break the promise, then that goes out of the window. You
Well,
can't come back.
It sets you back.
Yeah.
And, or however, if you do make a promise or resolution, do it with all of your heart.
Yeah.
When Wilf said, hey, that's what I'm looking for,
Yes.
it wasn't really what you were looking for, but you said, hey, if he's going to do it, I will too.
I will too. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a doing it with all of your heart. See,
Yeah.
I went on to say, it seems to me the problem with many resolutions, and this does fit in with the grief journey, is that we have a tendency to walk alongside the very thing we're attempting to leave behind. We try to make changes in our lives by sheer willpower. Willpower doesn't work. Whether it's a New Year's resolution or overcoming the difficulty of a sudden and very traumatic loss, we don't have by ourselves the strength to overcome that difficulty. We need others. We need something beyond ourselves. So there's another scripture that says that in that same respect, two are better than one because they have a good return for the labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. That's what it's all about. And that's what we want you to get, those of you who are viewing today. You may be sitting in your home all by yourself, but tune in weekly and monthly. We're here. We're with you. We're for you. At the end of the program, we're going to give you an email address and a physical address. Write me your letters. We'll respond to them.
Sure.
I'm sure that though people grew weary, like C.S. Lewis said, I dread going to the house alone. So what can take a place of that loneliness?
Yeah, he hurt so much. He suffered so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me read another one. In the past year and a half, I've lost three very special people in my life. They all died. I consider myself a very introverted person. I find it hard to get out. I feel lonely and overwhelmed. There are so many things that I need to get done. I guess what I'm looking for is someone to help pick up the other side of the plywood. Help.
Yeah. That's what I said when I was on the settee, praying to everybody.
Yeah,
I need help.
At some point, we get to the place where I cannot do this. Help.
Yeah.
And for me, and you validate that, when you get to that point where you've pretty much exhausted everything eternally, and you just wholeheartedly and unabashedly and without reservation cry for help, it came.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It is. It amazed me.
And we're not trying to promote any particular religion or denomination, but for you, it was a religious or a spiritual experience. Because I don't think that we can get away from that. You know, somebody said that though many of us may not be religious, we are all spiritual. And that void really can only be, in your case, it was filled by a spiritual thing. But with that being said, I wrote back to this person, and she signed the letter, Dear Lonely, or Lonely and Overwhelmed. And that's how I responded back. And I encouraged her, you're at a point where you have got to take care of the most important person in the world, and that person is you. You know, Miss Fay, we're almost out of time, and you brought a poem with you. It's really interesting. You were standing in line at Walmart.
And a lady came up to me, and she told me she was from the Mormon church, and she had lost a little girl, and she was so happy. And I thought, how can she be happy?
Right.
And so she said, I've got a poem I want to give you.
Well, as we conclude our show for today, please go ahead and read this for us.
Okay. I will lend you for a little time, a child of mine, God said, for you to love the while she lives and mourn for when she's dead. It may be 6 or 7 years or 22 or 3, but will you, till I call her back, take care of her for me? She'll bring her charms to gladden you, and should her stay be brief, you'll have her lovely memories as solace for your grief. I cannot promise she will stay, since all from earth return, but there are lessons taught down there I want this child to learn. I've looked the wide world over in search for teachers true, and for the throngs that crowd life's lanes, I have selected you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Please look for us again. Feeling lonely, overwhelmed,